If you're programming depth jumps for most of your athletes, you're probably making a mistake. Not because depth jumps are bad, because most athletes really aren't ready for them. And most coaches don't have a system for knowing the difference. In this video, I'm going to give you a framework for plyometric readiness and show you why the exercise you choose matters a lot less than the quality you're actually trying to train. Before we go anywhere, I want to clear something up because these two terms get used interchangeably and they shouldn't be. A depth jump and a drop jump are training two different qualities. A drop jump is about reactivity, so you step off of a box, and the goal is to react to the ground as fast as possible. So short ground contact, get back up, and jump as high as you can. You're not trying to absorb a huge amount of force through a big range of motion. You're trying to get off the ground quickly. Drop jumps train reactive strength. A depth jump is different. While fast ground contact times are important for both jumps, with a depth jump, you step off of the box and you're trying to load as much as possible. The time spent on the ground is longer relative to a drop jump because what matters is maximizing the eccentric load from the jump to drive the highest possible concentric output. You're using the fall to your advantage. So depth jumps more closely train explosive strength. Same box, completely different quality. Drop jumps, reactivity, focusing on minimal ground contact time, get up fast, and depth jumps, maximal force output. You want to load the eccentric action and use it. The reason I'm starting here is that if you don't know which one you're prescribing and why, you can't know whether your athlete is ready for it. And that readiness question is exactly what most coaches skip. I've been thinking about plyometric progressions for a long time. It was a significant part of the work that I did at Athletes Performance, at Munster Rugby, and in several of the military environments that I worked in after that. And the pattern I keep seeing across all those contexts, across populations that couldn't be more different, is the same one. Coaches jump to the top of the pyramid, not because they're careless, because the advanced stuff looks like it's the right stuff to be doing. So depth jumps and hurdle hops, drop landings into power movements. It's visually impressive and it looks sport specific and it films well. But when you actually look at the athlete and you ask the readiness question, the progression hasn't been earned. A basketball player should be doing reactive jump work, right? Because they jump constantly in their sport, and that logic sounds reasonable on the surface. Until you realize that playing basketball involves reactive jumping, but training for basketball still needs to follow a progression. What the athlete does in competition tells you what qualities they need, but it doesn't tell you if they already have those qualities in a training context where you're trying to develop them further. I've spoken about this before and it's worth reiterating. If playing a sport developed the quality needed within the sport, then there would be no need for training outside of the sport. Sports reveal the qualities we need, but that doesn't mean that playing the sport develops those qualities to the degree that we need to excel at them. Reactive plyometrics don't automatically create reactive strength. They expose it first and only develop if the athlete has the foundation to use them in the appropriate exposure to elevate those abilities. That's the part most coaches haven't checked for. One of the most useful tools for making plyometric readiness concrete is RSI, Reactive Strength Index, and the concept is simple. It's a ratio, so it's jump height divided by ground contact time. If an athlete spends a long time on the ground relative to how high they jump, reactive capacity is low. If they spend very little time on the ground and still jump high, then reactive capacity is high. You don't need expensive technology to get useful information here, right? A jump mat or even careful observation gives you a starting point. As a rough guide, and I want to be clear, this is context and sport dependent, an RSI below 1.5 generally tells me that the athlete isn't yet reactive. They're bouncing or grinding through contacts and the stiffness and elastic quality just isn't there yet. Between 1.5 and 2 is a building range, so reactivity is developing, but it's not robust. And then above 2 starts to indicate genuine reactive readiness for more demanding work. Here's the thing, the specific numbers matter less than the concept they point to. Before you load true reactive plyometric work or progress into higher intensity shock methods, you need to know where the athlete actually sits. Most coaches don't know because they've never asked. They've selected exercises based on what looks appropriate and not based on what the athlete has actually demonstrated. To understand why progression matters, you need to understand what plyometrics are actually training because it isn't one thing. Plyometrics can develop 3 distinct qualities, and those qualities require different exercises, progressions, and different levels of foundation. Explosive strength is the ability to produce high levels of force rapidly, either from minimal preload or after a controlled eccentric load. So things like vertical jumps, counter movement jumps, broad jumps, these are all examples of movements that include larger ranges of motion, and the goal here is not minimal ground contact time. The goal is to use force, then express as much of it as possible. This is where depth jump logic lives, and they bias explosive strength when the goal is eccentric absorption and concentric output, not elastic rebound alone. So you're using the eccentric load to redirect and drive the highest possible concentric output. Elastic strength is the ability to store and return energy through the stretch shortening cycle. So pogo hops, ankle stiffness work, low load cyclical patterns work best for elastic strength. The body learns to use the elastic properties of the musculotendinous system. With these movements, rhythm and coordination become critically developed. And then reactive strength is the ability to switch rapidly from loading to unloading with minimal ground contact time. This is that drop jump quality. So high demand, short contacts, high stiffness requirement. This tends to be the most demanding of the three. These plyometric qualities can build on each other relative to the demand of the ground contact. So if you use ground contact as a point of reference, you can develop a clear structure of progression and development. Based on ground contact demand and the influence on performance as the frame, a logical progression would be to develop explosive capacity before you challenge elastic capacity. Develop elastic capacity before you develop reactive capacity. So here's the rule. If they can't produce force with their feet on the ground, build explosive strength. If they can't recycle force, you build elastic strength. And if they can't redirect force, you develop reactive strength. That's the decision filter. When I see X, I do Y. It's not a guess, it's a system. If you skip that order, you're not just missing developmental opportunities, you're asking athletes to express a quality that they haven't built the foundation to express effectively. So here's how I organize this into a progression that coaches can actually use. Tier 1 is foundational. The athlete learns landing mechanics, deceleration, and basic jump land patterns, so box step downs, broad jumps to stick landings, and low height controlled jumps. The goal is the quality of absorption, nothing reactive, nothing complex. The question you're answering is, can this athlete manage force on the way down? Also in this tier is explosive strength, so can they coordinate and sequence the eccentric load with concentric output? Tier 2, elastic. The athlete develops the stretch shortening cycle through low intensity cyclical work, so pogos, low hurdle hops, double leg bounding with a focus on stiffness and bounce. In this tier, ground contact times start to matter. You're building the elastic quality that reactive work eventually demands. Tier 3, reactive. Now you're training drop jump qualities, so short ground contacts, reactive output, and the athlete demonstrating good RSI. So now you can use box jumps with intent, single leg bounding, and moderate intensity reactive pattern. At this point, the athlete has earned this demand. Tier 4, advanced. This is your high intensity work, so depth jumps for maximal eccentric loading and explosive output, complex reactive sequences, and sport-specific bounding with maximum elastic and explosive return. Here's what I want you to sit with. The majority of athletes, even trained competitive athletes with significant training history, need more time in Tier 1 and Tier 2 than coaches typically give them. Not because they're weak or underprepared, but because reactive and explosive strength are qualities that take time to develop, and no amount of exposure to a harder exercise substitutes for time spent building the foundation that makes that exercise effective. Let me make this concrete. Take a basketball point guard, a competitive, high training age, clearly explosive athlete. The sport involves constant reactive jumping. The temptation, and I've seen this consistently, is to go straight to hurdle hops and drop jumps because the sport looks like it demands them. Here's what I'd actually do first. Assess the RSI and watch the pogo pattern. Does this athlete bounce efficiently with short ground contacts, or are they grinding through each rep, spending too much time on the ground and lacking the stiffness to reload quickly? If they're grinding, Tier 2 first. Pogos, low hurdle hops focused on ankle stiffness work. Build the elastic quality before you demand reactive output. And if you want to develop maximal explosive output, if you're thinking about depth jumps, ask this question first. Does this athlete have the eccentric control to load that drop and convert it? Can they handle the force absorption required before the jump? And if the answer isn't clear, start lower in the progression. Only once you see genuine elastic quality, so short contacts, consistent stiffness, and good bounce, do you move to Tier 3. Only once Tier 3 is robust do you consider Tier 4, and that's the progression. The quality needs to be there before the demand escalates. This is a harder sell to coaches who want to see depth jumps in week 1, and it's a harder sell to athletes who feel like they should be doing more complex work. But this is the approach that actually builds the qualities you're after, not just athletes who've been exposed to advanced exercises without the foundation to benefit from them. The goal of plyometric training isn't to expose athletes to impressive looking exercises. It's to systematically develop strength qualities, explosive, elastic, and reactive strength in the order that allows each one to build on the last. That requires a framework, not just progression from easy to hard, but a progression from foundational quality to expressed quality, and understanding what you're actually training with each exercise and whether the athlete in front of you has earned the right to be there. Drop jumps for reactivity, depth jumps for maximal eccentric driven explosive output. Different tools, different purposes, and different readiness requirements. The coaches who get this right aren't the ones with the most impressive exercise library. They're the ones who ask the readiness question first every time. That's the shift from reacting to designing, and that's the shift from technician to architect. If this kind of systems thinking is something you want to build into the way that you coach, so not just for plyometrics, but across your entire program design process, that's exactly what I'm building with this channel, and it's exactly what I've built with Program Pro. Hit that subscribe button to continue the conversation and keep building.